What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Guys, we're back with my guy Andrew Austin. I did a video on Steven's channel about the difference between Sweden and American schools, and this is a big topic for me in education. 'Cause I worked in education. I still do. I sub a little here and there, so this is kind of big to me on just how the teaching strategies and what's different in different countries when it comes to education. Andrew seemed like, I believe he probably got a little bit more experience in teaching in Sweden. So we finna hear that. That's why I wanted to do this video to kind of see, because this video he said he has 6 years of teaching, and right now uh, I've been working in education for about 5, 6 years, just doing different things here and there, but still working with students. So this is a big topic for me. We finna see the difference. And also Steven was like a PE teacher. So I got to learn just the different things that you do in physical education in Sweden. You know, some of you said it was true. Some of you said it wasn't true. It's just, I guess, different strokes for different folks. So we finna get into this. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hey, send down more recommendations. Also, I put a post down in the community tab. Go check it out. I'm looking to buy some Swedish candy. I found a website. I already got a few people telling me what I should try. So I'm going to get ready to order that. So, hey, make sure you go put down what I need to buy to taste some Swedish candy. So, but let's jump into it.
Hey guys, what's going on? Andrew coming at you, and in this one I thought it'd be interesting to talk about 12 differences between the Swedish school system versus the United States school system. Coming from someone that grew up in the United States system as a student, I went to university there, and then if you include my student teaching, I was in the school system working for about a year. And if you look at the Swedish system, I've been a teacher in Sweden for 6 years. So that's where my knowledge comes from, and that's where my view coming from. I don't think that one system is perfect or the best. I like a lot of things about the Swedish system. I like a lot of things about the U.S. system. Ultimately, I think that the best schools in the United States can compete with the best schools in Sweden. So let's get into it. One of the first fundamental differences that is just interesting in general is that in a Swedish school system, kids are going to call you by your first name. So I would be accustomed to usually students calling us by our last name, which in the U.S. is like a sign of respect, but it's just something you hear all the time. Like you always hear your last name when someone addresses you in a mail or a phone call. And in the Swedish school system, they call me Andrew, which is just interesting in general. It wasn't necessarily like a negative thing that I noticed. It was just something that I found interesting. The next thing
I think that's something big, like you said, down here, because when I go to school, my last name Wilson, so most of the kids, I just say my name Mr. Wilson. 'Cause my first name is hard to pronounce anyway, so I feel like Wilson is easier to pronounce, especially for kids. But I think that, for me, that wouldn't be a big deal, because like I have my own organization where I coach basketball as well, which is getting ready to come up. So y'all might see some footage for me coaching as well, travel basketball. But like most of my players, they call me by my nickname. My nickname is Sticks because I was super skinny. You know, I played basketball super skinny. My coach in 7th grade, he couldn't pronounce my name, so he said, "Hey Sticks, come here." So, but some of my players, they call me coach, or you know, as long as they ain't disrespecting me, calling me, cussing me out, and I don't mind. But most of my players even call me Sticks. You know, hey Sticks or Dar. They call, you know, they don't Mr. Wilson, Coach Wilson. It just depends who they are, but I just see it as long as they know my name, long as they know who I am, you know. So
want to go into though is that teachers do not have the same power structure that they probably have in the United States. I feel like the teachers I had growing up had such a higher authority over students, where in the Swedish school system, it's more of a level playing field. A teacher has authority, but if you're a student in a Swedish system, you feel a lot more on the same level. And that just comes down to the Swedish structure of power in general. Like bosses in the United States have a lot more power over than they do in Sweden, and that's just how Sweden kind of views power structure. It's just not the same. A boss here has to really agree, and a lot of people have to agree together. So I don't think it's a particular different thing just with schools in Sweden. I just think it's a fundamental philosophy that's different.
that's
Number
interesting.
three, there's a different discipline structure in Swedish school systems versus the United States school system. U.S. schools are a lot more strict. It's a lot more easy to give a kid detention. I remember getting a detention in elementary school because I didn't do homework 3 times, to give you an example. That can happen. It's very easy to pull a kid out of school and have in-school suspensions. And in the Swedish system, it's really, you're not allowed to just give
Dang.
someone detention or punish someone if it's not like educational. You have to make an argument that it's educational. So there's a lot of laws and stuff that happen with that. It's a lot more difficult legally to pull a kid outside of school and have these harsh disciplines. And I think in the U.S. system, like I think sometimes in Swedish schools it could be good to have a little bit more authority to do more. But if you're making the counter argument to the U.S. system, we have a lot more harsher discipline. But if you also look at our prison numbers and things like that, we have one of the highest in the world. So
Yeah.
I think you can make an argument as well that
And this is something key for me because I mean, when I teach, I don't like it can be the smallest thing, or kids can accidentally like do something like you got to see it as, hey, sir or ma'am, don't do that again. Like you got to talk to it like. But I worked in schools. I know some teachers like it was even three strikes. It was one strike, especially for a certain kid. It was one strike you out. I had like even when I worked in special education and worked in elementary and stuff like that. I had kids that we had to send to like in school suspension. We call ISS, but it wasn't like they got it just for doing that one thing. Real, it's stuff that starts adding up. Then eventually we had to like send them down. And usually when they go to in school suspension, it helps them a lot because now they're away from their peers and they're able to actually get stuff done. Able to actually I feel like learn a little bit more, but I don't think it's worth suspending a kid and sending them home unless he just did something like super super serious that police had to get involved. That's the only. But like you'd be surprised, man. I could get, man, this could be a long video because I could talk about just my experience working in elementary. It's crazy. It's so different. It's very different. But hey, that's just how it is. I don't feel like kids should just get thrown in unless like it's something major. If it's something minor that can get corrected, or because we gotta think too, like their home life. We don't know how their home life is, for the reason for the behavior most times. So
maybe high discipline doesn't necessarily lead to better behavior. Another interesting thing I noticed about Swedish schools is it seems that every Swedish school kind of has a short day. So there's a day where the kids go early so that the teachers can have a meeting, which I find to be
that's
interesting.
important.
Number 5 is going to be everybody gets a free lunch. And this is one that's interesting. And I like it about the Swedish school. And of course, I know nothing is free. You got to pay taxes. I see that all the time in the comments. But what I like about it is, let's say a kid in Sweden doesn't have the best home life. We know at least 5 days a week during the school year that kid is getting one solid meal every day. It's a very, very healthy meal. The food is a lot healthier here in Sweden than you have in the States. There's much more structure with that. And I do believe that having a healthy diet leads to just living a healthier life. And although there's not the case now, but when I was in the Swedish school system, I mean American school system, and I was a student, it's changed, but I could get Coca-Cola, Mountain Dew every day, candy, I could eat French fries every day.
they actually changed that now. I don't know how old this video is. This video might be 2 or 3 years older, maybe a little longer. I don't know how long Andrew been doing this, but I know now, at least down here in US, they have at least in where I was working at, they have more of healthy meals and stuff like that. But the thing is, sometimes it might not be appealing to the kids or it don't look good. But all the kids do get free breakfast and free lunch now. That started like 2 or 3 years ago. So the kids do get free breakfast and free lunch. I think teachers still have to pay though. I had to pay. I was subbing the other day and paid $2 for a lunch, which isn't bad because some people charge like $5 for a little bit of nothing. But hey, I don't even eat the school lunch, you know what I'm saying? But it's good. Most kids do get that opportunity to get that free lunch. Then I knew a teacher, she used to like whatever the kids didn't eat, like if they had like fruit left over that was like untouched and stuff like that, or yogurt, she'll save it to the side because it's a lot of kids, even when they go home, they don't have much to eat. So now they at least got a banana, now they at least got an orange or an apple, some yogurt, or a Pop-Tart or something like that to take with them. So I think that's a good thing. But sometimes it's just not appealing to some kids, at least the food they serve here.
Pizza, and even in like my college life. And the thing is, when you're young like that, you're not old enough really to make the best decisions for yourself. And 16-year-old me liked pizza and French fries and didn't necessarily think of the consequences. So I do think it's nicer that we have healthier food here. Number 6 is going to be the grading structure in Sweden, and I prefer the American grading structure over the Swedish grading structure. But like the American grading structure is pretty much A, B, C, D, F, and it usually runs with percentages. So if you get 90% and above, that's going to be an A. 80% and above, this was in university, that's going to be a B. And usually a teacher will calculate everything. Maybe it's 60% tests, 30% quizzes, and like 10% projects, and maybe there's a percentage that's attendance, and they add that overall average up and say this is your grade. I find in the Swedish system there's E, C, and A. There's also other letters in the grading system, but what makes this one a little bit more different is there's usually a bunch of different standards you have to meet. I think it's open to a lot more interpretation, because you can also, you only have to show the knowledge sometimes one time to display that you have it. And in the Swedish system, you can sometimes take tests over again and things like that. And I just find that the American system's a little bit more concrete, personally. I just feel like it's like exact. This is what you got. This is why you got that. But that's my interpretation. Okay, fine, you can take tests and things again. And I'm not trying to be critical in a negative way, but like I have a fundamental time where in my life in college, I only had 2 tests in a class, and I got an F on the first test, and it was all because I just didn't go to class, and I thought I knew everything about history, and then I went to class, and I got an A, so the average came out to a C, and I kind of preferred that because the life lesson I learned from you only get one shot, because in life you only get one shot with the interview and things like that, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily like a terrible thing. It's just a difference. I still think that the system makes sense. I just think it's a little bit harder to understand than other systems.
Yeah, because I feel like the grading structure is pretty simple with us. But I feel like if I was in Sweden for, quite a bit of time, that I would understand the grading system and stuff like that, which is good because sometimes, like sometimes we do waste time going, like I believe in refreshers. Like if I'm in a class, we should go back. Like if we have to go back over something, that's okay. But if we have to spend so much time over something that we already learned, like probably prior to the years or prior month or something like that, I feel like now we wasting time trying to relearn something that we already learned. But I do believe that we should have refreshers.
7, and this is a difference between American schools, is that there's mentorship in Sweden, where a particular teacher or maybe a group of teachers has a responsibility for students, and you meet with the parents sometimes twice a year to have what's called like utvecklingssamtal. It's when you have a conversation with the student about their grades, where they're going, their goals, and overall you discuss like where's the students going, what's the school going to do to help the student, what's the student going to do, what's the teacher going to do or the mentor do. And we don't have that in the American system. A lot of times in the U.S., it's everybody fends for themselves, and kind of in the U.S. system, you're just considered to be responsible for yourself right away, and there's not a teacher that's involved. But when I was in university, believe it or not, I did have a mentor. So I think it's interesting here. It's very nice and interesting to be a mentor in the Swedish school system. And an interesting thing about that is in the Swedish school systems, you have a class that you're with all the time, your mentor class, and you can be with that same class for multiple years. A lot of people that are friends in Sweden were friends from such a young age, and I think that's a really cool thing that they have that experience. But in the American system, you change classes a lot more, so I see positive and negatives with both. I think, wow, the tightness you have from having one particular class has to be awesome, but let's say you don't like, I don't know, someone from that class, you're with them for a lot of time, so like one thing that was cool with the American system was that you did switch around so much, but at the same time, I still had close friendships. So I don't think one's like better than the other. This is just how my mind thinks about these type of things. The next one's going to be that
and I think that's important that kids get mentors, because even as adults, we need mentors sometimes. We need somebody to still help us, and we need strong friends that's going to have our back and stuff. But one of the key things he said that really I experienced as well when I went to college was that we had like a freshman success coach, and they were basically like our guidance counselor, and they're like, that was that person, like we had a class, and that was that person we can go to help us about anything that we need to know about the campus, anything we need to know, how to schedule our classes and do all that stuff, and find housing and all those things. So I feel like that's important, especially like he said, like it builds long life friendships too. Kids ain't got to wonder, hey, who's going to be my... Now you building up with people that you started with,
You're 9 in Sweden is like a big deal compared to the United States. In year 9 in the U.S., you're starting your first year of high school, which is kind of like gymnasium in Sweden, which is kind of like their high school. Year 9, to get into the gymnasium, you have to get so many points on your grades. In the U.S., in 9th grade, it's your first year of high school. It's not the biggest deal in the world. You're just kind of getting started, where there's a lot more pressure on students in year 9 to kind of get their grades in order to get into the school they want, and they're already dealing with competition. And I think that's great and all, but I remember how I was in 9th grade, and I don't think it needs to be so stressful. I think that kids nowadays are a lot more stressed about getting into the right gymnasium and about life, and I just think at 15 or 16, I just think that's a bit too much. Number 9 is national tests. Now, I don't like the national test system in the United States, to say the least, because I just think it's a lot of pressure. We're always being tested. And in the U.S. system, it kind of punishes schools. A lot of times they would say to a school, if you're struggling and your kids don't do well, you're going to get less money. And an interesting point with this is that in the U.S. system, there's like a standardization. Like you have a state test, which is like your region, like you would have in Sweden, but you also have a national test. And the tests go out directly to independent testing group that grades the tests. I'm not saying this would ever happen in Sweden, but I always found it a little bit interesting that teachers grade their own tests here in school. I just think it maybe could be better to have a centralized place where you do it, so you have a neutral party grading it. But luckily, like national tests aren't as big of a deal as they are in the U.S., and I don't think it affects.
Dang, I could talk all day because I don't. To me, the national the test that the kids do here in the U.S., guys, I feel like it's not even their grade. It's like way above their grade level. Then sometimes teachers don't even get. Some days they're not even able to like teach everything that's gonna be on the test. You know, because some kids learn a little slower than others. You know, some kids learn faster than others. So, but everybody got different learning styles. So, can't really even just touch on every topic, and we expect these kids to get like a major, you know, take these major or national tests and get graded by that. And we test that. Like in school, like I had tests that I failed, I had tests that I passed, but I almost got held back twice. They almost held me back. Like I got straight A's and B's in my class, but because I failed my test by 2 or 3 points, I almost got held back in the grade just because I didn't pass a test. So you see that it's like it's not making sense because it's like I understand the teacher. Maybe, you know, some kids have test anxiety. I know I had test anxiety to the point where I would study, but then that test in front of me, it seemed like everything go blank. I'm like, oh snap! But then there was one time, you know, when my junior year in high school, passed those tests with flying colors because I didn't have anxiety anymore. I was like my mind started. I don't know. I started understanding everything a little better and stuff like that. But to me, I don't think kids should be held back for not passing a test, but it almost happened to me twice.
Schools money as much, so I don't have a necessarily problem with it. I just think it's interesting and different. Number 10 is every student gets 11's Vol, which is like called student choice, where they can pick an activity that they want to go ahead and do, and they have to have so many hours of this over the course of their education. Wow. I think that's an interesting thing, but in the U.S. school, we don't really have that, but what you have is an integration with sports, which I actually prefer because I think it's better because in the U.S. system, you have like basketball, football, and a lot of these sports are linked to the school. A lot of the coaches happen to go to the school. A lot of the students go to the sporting events. And what I really enjoy about it is to play on a football team or any of these things, you have to maintain good grades and you have to have good discipline in school. And I just think there's a nice benefit there of having the coaches support with the school systems to get kids on the right track. It's something you dangle out. You say, hey, if you got to do good in math if you want to play football. You need to get by. So it's an interesting thing. Although I can say a negative to the U.S. system with that is if you look at the university level, there's a lot of maybe football players that are excellent football players that aren't really good students that the school system kind of turns a blind eye to and doesn't really help them learn. And if you think about it, a very, very small percentage of college players actually go to the NFL or go professional, so they would probably benefit from having more stuff that you have to do education-wise.
And this is major because like I play sports and stuff, and it do make a difference because like when you're playing sport, most time those students that play sports they have more connections with their coaches because they're interested in playing football, they're interested in playing basketball. So there's more connection there than just any other teachers. Sometimes I can't say for all the time, but he's right. I remember I had a Spanish teacher. He told us that he taught at a school, and they had like one of the top running backs in the state, one of the top running backs in the state, and said the dude was not smart at all, but he still got a scholarship and went because they know how to pull some strings, man. They know how to pull some strings to get the talent.
One of the ones I find to be very, very interesting is that in the Swedish school system, everybody gets a break. Like we got like a 30-minute recess when I was in the U.S. school system up until about 5th grade. Yep. And then maybe sometimes I would have like a study hall period. That was a time where you just could sit down and maybe do things like that, like you would study or do other things. But in the Swedish school system, as far as I've seen, every student usually gets like at least a 20-minute or a 30-minute break every day to kind of go outside and get some fresh air. And I actually think that's a good thing that they have in the Swedish system that maybe we could benefit from in the States. But as far as I know, in the state system, it's always just school. So that's one interesting thing that...
Yeah, because they do. He said 5th grade. I think our recess, they start taking it in 7th grade, because now when I was in 7th grade, middle school and stuff, we were able to play sports. So they took away recess. I know we went from having like 30 minutes of recess in elementary to like 5th, 6th grade. It went to like 10 to 15. It wasn't even long. It started getting lower and lower to eventually they don't give us that time.
I thought about number 12 is going to be the free voucher system, which I think is interesting. So in Sweden, a student can choose like any school they want to go to. If they don't like a school, they can get out of that school and try to get into the lottery to get into another school. I don't want to say it's a lottery, but you get on a list and you have to wait. And I think that gives the student a lot of power to choose what school they go to. And that's interesting. Like in the U.S. system, and this is, I think, important to point out, the worst schools in Sweden are nowhere near as bad as the worst schools in the U.S. When I was in Ohio, student teaching there, I particularly was at a school where they didn't have like the right computers, they didn't have enough books that the kids could take home.
Wow.
And I'm not even kidding, like people outside the school while I was going to the school were smoking crack outside. This was a school in Youngstown, Ohio, a rough area. And you can't tell me that the kids there have the same benefit and the same way of success as someone that's just down the street in Ohio that has a rich school. So your school system in the United States is based around how well the taxes you can generate from the schools are. And in the Swedish system, every student is worth a certain amount of money. So if you keep kids there, that's how money you get, how much money you get per kid for the school. I think that's an interesting thing. I think there's a lot of positives with that. I think there's a lot of incentives with that. So I think it's positive. I will say one negative I think is possible. I'm not saying this happens, but it's a possibility, is I do think that certain kids can bounce around from schools a lot, and possibly that could be a negative thing because maybe they have an underlying diagnosis, like maybe they have a learning disability in math, and it never gets identified because they bounce and bounce and bounce, or it's possible that they can get some knowledge gaps. So I think overall it's not abused. I think it works, but I think a small percentage of students can constantly bounce around until they get certain issues.
I know some people technically do that. Most time down here, parents do that and move their kids around to certain schools. Because I know with my son, like he go to a certain school right now, but as he gets older, he's probably going to be at a different school because the school he's at now don't have football, but he plays like select football and stuff like that. But like I feel like most times here, parents are the ones, they make that decision whether they move, get a new job and move, or they just have to, they just feel that a certain school is best fit for their child. And most times you just need, I think you just need like a mailing address in the area to be able to go to certain school. But I feel like if kids actually chose to go to school or chose a school, it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. 'Cause I know here in the States, some of these kids, it's sad, but it's the truth. Some of these kids don't like going to school. Like, I'm just being honest. It's not a good thing at all. 'Cause most of them complain it's too early or this, that. But they need to learn. But I don't know. I might have to Google and look up the dropout rates in the U.S. because I'm pretty sure they're pretty high.
Issues taken care of. So that's interesting. And I think the last thing to say with that, as far as the differences in education, because it's important to point out, is that education in Sweden is free. Now, it's not. I hate people always write in my comments, "Oh, you have to pay the taxes for it." I get that, and that's true. And you have to borrow some money from the government in Sweden if you go to university, usually, if you want to pay for living expenses and stuff. But the difference between the U.S. model and here is like, it takes forever to pay it off. It's nowhere near the same amount. I would say the average you owe in taxes in the U.S. for going to school is probably $50,000 and in the Swedish system, it's probably closer to like $10,000 to $12,000. A lot of things are included, and in the U.S. system you have to pay for school, and in the competitiveness and everything else, the prices have kind of gone up in general to go to university.
Way up.
And yes, you are in debt. Yes, it's not free. Yes, we have a higher tax rate in Sweden than we have in the United States. I get all of that, but you're not in debt as soon as you come out of school, and I think that's the biggest difference really is when I see people my age, like, you know, my girlfriend and stuff like that, she doesn't live with the same level of stress that I have to pay my tuition bills, because all my tuition bills every month probably average out to be about 5,000 to 6,000 Swedish crowns. So we're talking like $800 to $900 of my salary every month has to go to paying the bills back. And if you think about it, if you want to get out of debt, you got to pay all this stuff off. Plus, you got to try to save a lot of money and stuff. And it's just the added stress that's in my life that I don't think the average Swede has to deal with. And I think that education should be seen as a right to life and not like a privilege.
And just before he finished, I want to know, because I know down here, if you teach for at least, I think, 4 or 5 years, you can actually get your loans forgiven, like to a certain amount. I don't think completely, but I mean, if you pay on for 5 years, like by the time they're forgiven, they should be down, depending on what you go. Depending on how much you owe. But I think they will forgive your loans if you talk for 5 years. But him being in Sweden, I don't think it would kind of, you know, since it's somewhere different. But he's still paying to the state. So he might can work some. I'm sure he probably got it out the way by now. But I know 5 years, they'll forgive your loans where they are cancel that debt.
I think it should be something that's fundamentally guaranteed. I don't know how we bring down the cost of that in the United States, but I think that's what we could do better. I think that we can lift up a lot of the schools that we have that don't do so well. And I've always heard the argument that we spend more than the average other country on kids in school, but that might not lead to being efficient, though. Like, there's probably a way to be a little bit more efficient. So I think the things we can work on the best is having better quality food, working on cutting down the cost for university, and also lowering how long you have to go to school. Like, I went to school to become a teacher. And I was in the school system for like 5 years because I transferred. I had to go to another school. And yeah, it's great. I had to take astronomy and all these other classes, and I got a lot well-rounded. But when you're paying $50,000 back, I would have rather paid $25,000 and had 2 years of school to come out and be a teacher. So those are the differences. I want to stretch again that I don't think like one system is better than the other. I love being a teacher here in Sweden, and although maybe the system isn't as there isn't as much discipline, I'm not like really that strict of a teacher to begin with. Like, I think there's a way you can make things strict in a classroom. You have certain expectations, but what I mean is, like, personally, I don't like to raise my voice or have to get angry to get people to listen. I'd rather have a conversation with them anyways.
Yeah, I usually use attention getters, and I reward my kids, like, especially when I go and sub for second grade class. I always reward them, because I be like, you know, as long as y'all know the work, we do the work together, hey, we gonna get some free time, we gonna get rewarded for those that are doing what they're supposed. Like, most times, like, it's not even them being disrespectful to me. It's more the kids being disrespectful to each other, and that's where I have to step in, because it's like, come on, guys, y'all 7 or 8 years old, y'all don't have to be rude to each other all the time. But usually, like, as y'all see, I'm a pretty soft-spoken guy. I don't really yell or nothing. I use attention getters, different things like that. And the kids, they know what that means. So I usually would be like, if you can hear me clap once, everybody will clap. If you can hear me clap twice, everybody clap twice. And, you know, boom, I got their attention. All right, now moving on to the next thing. But, yeah, I'll talk a little bit more. It just kind of
fits my personality. I like to stay calm and relaxed. So it works really, really well for me. And the things that I point out that are criticisms of both systems, are just my opinion. But I follow everything by the book the way you're supposed to here in Sweden, just like I would in the States. So if you like this one, guys, don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button, as it really helps me out. It was a lot of fun to do this one. If there's anything that I missed, and I'm sure there was, go ahead and type it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey,
Appreciate it, Andrew. Okay, that was pretty good. Already subscribed. I always gotta make sure, because sometimes I'll be logged into my other account. But I feel like what he said, it was very important. I just like to see the differences, and that's what he was telling us. Like he said, it's his opinion, and I feel like down here, even though it's discipline, I feel like the discipline is kind of going away in the States. Like I said, I don't know how long ago this video was, but the discipline is going away. And for those, I mean, I don't know how the kids are in Sweden, but I know down here in the States, it's different. These kids are different. It's different to the point where, like, I deal with a lot of kids disrespecting, like, other adults, teachers, and stuff. I'm sure y'all got it too, but I just know U.S. kids, it's so different. So, I mean, I don't know until I visit Sweden, maybe visit a few schools or something in Sweden and see. But I know it's very different here, because some kids' home life are just the worst, and you know they translate that, they bring that to school. At least where I'm at, you know, and that's not everywhere though, but certain places that I've been at, even like the school that I grew up at, I was able to work there again. And you can just see the kids, like, it was their home life, you know. It had nothing to do with not knowing the schoolwork. It was their home life which distracted them from the schoolwork. So, but I appreciate this video, Andrew. Hey, I got to check out. I think he got a newer one, kind of giving some differences, and he more experience. He got some more experience now teaching. But, guys, that's all I have for this video. Y'all make sure y'all, hey, go to that community tab, send me some Swedish candy, or send me some the names of some Swedish candy I can order. Hit that subscribe button, send down those recommendations, and y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.